But that's the camera over there. I'm stroking out doing the other one.
That one?
Oh, and with
that's
the
not
broken
the one it
fingers.
was recording on.
That's
But
not the one I was recording on.
Let's start over.
There you go.
I did all of them.
Mm-hmm.
We did start. That was
Wait,
a
that
start.
was
We're
another
going to
start.
call it a
Is
start.
this a thing I can fidget with during the episode?
Oh.
guys?
Wow.
Okay, go on.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back to another episode of AusTableTalk. My name's Luke. I'm at the table with Christian, Emerson, and Steve.
Hello.
Hello.
Good
Hey.
evening.
I know that sounded like I said Christian, but I
Yeah.
did mean Kristen.
Yeah,
Yes, well,
yeah.
yeah.
I answer to
My
any
to any of your siblings' names. I think it's just the end of a long week, and my mouth is giving up at this point. It's just like I'm going to go on
Great for
holidays.
podcasting.
Yeah, I know. I yes, perfect.
Oh, we forgive you.
Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate that. Great. All right. So we are coming up on the third episode of the series that we're doing on the fruits of the Spirit. Before we recap that and jump into our next fruit, we have a social media post that was submitted by Matt. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
This one I believe is not a video. It is a single image. But how about you share that for us? Charles Spurgeon. When asked what is more important, praying or reading the Bible, I ask what is more important, breathing in or breathing out? Charles
That's
Spurgeon.
good.
I do like that.
That is good.
Do you find it challenging in any way, or just a good articulation?
No, I think it's a really good articulation because if you're not praying or you're not reading your Bible, you are suffocating.
I like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've spoken to people that are like, I don't really enjoy reading, and so I just pray, or whatever explanation it comes attached to that. And I think it's possible to pray and just have that connection with God, because for thousands of years, reading and writing was not something that was even possible for a lot of the common people. So it's certainly possible to have a good connection with God. But I think the principle here is, is the communication a one-sided communication, or is it bidirectional? And bidirectional is the point. That's where we actually grow. That's how relationships build.
No, input and output, they have to be put together.
Yeah.
Because you can't just keep taking in, and then you're not going to make anything of value. But then if you just keep creating stuff without having like any input, then what are you doing? Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, we talked about this on the God Strategy series that we did, but like before
Listen to that
great series, go back and listen to it. We talked about how before the scriptures were written, God communicated with his people in a much different way than what he actually communicates with us now. He was much more vocal with his communication, whereas now he just communicates through the word. And I mean, not just through the word. He uses other venues, but
it's a massive channel that he can use
That's
now
right.
that he couldn't before.
yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
You talked about that in the interconnected episode as well.
Yeah.
Also a
You've
great
got-
episode.
Yeah, you've got a great memory for the things that we've talked about in other episodes. Like, I may remember them, but it's a lot of effort, and it's usually when you remind me.
I have a good memory of the things that I said in other episodes.
Okay, well,
That's good.
yeah, we'll take it. Well,
It's a problem.
It's a problem.
It's a problem.
Hey, it's still useful. It's useful to the people who are listening.
Sorry.
All right, cool. Thanks for sharing that with us, Matt. Appreciate it. Before we get deeply into where we're going in this episode, let's remind ourselves. Let's reread the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians chapter 5. Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. And those who are Christ's have crucified the flesh with its passion and desires. And it goes on, talks about living in the Spirit. But in that section, we in our first episode in this series, we talked about the alpha fruit being love. Love is that is the fruit of the Spirit, and all of these other aspects that we're talking about are all
It's the root of the Spirit.
connected. Yes.
I know that.
Ah, nice.
Love is the root of the spirit. Yes.
The root of the fruit.
Very much so.
Yeah. And
So-
then we talked about, we smushed together joy and peace.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes. Well, as we correct, we didn't do that intentionally. We got halfway through that episode.
Yeah.
And Emerson's like, this
throw a
is
little
just as
curveball.
applicable. Yeah, this is just as applicable for both of these fruits of the spirit. So yeah, we did a double. So therefore, we're talking about patience
Patience.
or long suffering.
Long-suffering, yeah.
long suffering. If that is
For
your
the
biblical.
KJV onlys.
Yes. Yes. And if you are, we love you too. It's cool.
Yeah.
To clarify.
Just to clarify. So how do we think about long suffering or patience? Sorry, were you going to say something, Steve? Did I jump on your?
No, I was laughing.
You were laughing.
Also, it's in the New King James as well, which I should have realised, but I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't revise.
Yes.
That's great. King James hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm. So what would you like? How would you explain long suffering if you were going to describe that as a quality?
The ability to suffer long.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
That word is actually a lot more.
Yeah.
That expression is a lot more
Literal,
self-explanatory than
yeah.
patience, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think, did I mention it when we talked about it earlier about patience?
Mhm.
And the other, anyway, I'll say it, and if I said it again, forget about it.
Mm.
But yeah, Exodus 34, we definitely went there in the first episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
Listing of God's characteristics, and surprise, surprise, being a fruit of the Spirit, God also, well, the Spirit being God, shares the same characteristics. And again, in that sermon that I was listening to, the word for long suffering, I believe, fact checks welcome, but it means to be long of nostril.
Yep.
So yeah, I think I have mentioned it before, but yeah,
I do remember that.
where
Yeah.
Yeah, long of nose. Yeah, long of nostril.
he can sigh for 6,000 years and still be sighing. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. That expression. It's sort of like, I don't know what is it sighing? Is that what it's trying to communicate?
I think so.
Yeah?
but
Okay.
I mean,
Because it's a weird expression,
me.
right? Like
Yeah.
in contemporary language, if you had a long nose, you're a liar.
Yeah, well, in our culture.
In our culture, right?
Well, I don't know. Long suffering and patience. I mean, maybe patience did mean the same thing, but it sort of has lost the suffering element.
Mm. It's just
that's a good
waiting.
point.
Yeah, it's just waiting happily. Like, I don't mind. I'll just wait.
Yeah.
Whereas long suffering means like, oh, I'm gonna suffer through this for as long as it takes.
Mm.
Like I'm not gonna opt out just because it's hard.
Yep.
I'm gonna keep persevering until the end. But I mean, patience is sort of like an adjective, but it's not really an active. Like you're sort of
It's
not doing
passive.
anything. Yeah, it's a passive. You're like, I'm gonna wait. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just a bit quiet then because I was just trying to think about it in terms of the other fruits of the fruits of the Spirit that we've talked about so far. You can look at that and you can see utility in the Christian life. Where is the utility of long suffering in the Christian life? What do we gain? What does God gain? What does God's cause gain by us being able to suffer for long periods of time?
Well, I think here we go. Like you said, patience is a passive adjective. But what's the opposite of patience? Impatience, hastiness, right? It's not passive at all.
No.
It's active, very active. And so I would say to sort of answer your question, but also sort of rephrase it, is like, what was your question? You said
What benefit does
why does it benefit us?
Yeah.
Well, it's not so much that it benefits us, it's that not being hasty benefits us, not being impatient benefits us. It's sort of like the not jumping in, not rushing
not doing
in,
the damaging thing.
not doing the damaging thing is what's actually helpful to us, because patience is passive. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
that's how I would answer it.
sorry, Steve.
Oh, right. I just verses and stories just cramming into my head. Sorry, guys. Made me think of a verse in Isaiah that says, "The day that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings of eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." Like and the reason why that came to my mind is because Saul is a great example of impatience, and that he was patient for a week. And he was like so close to like have waited long enough. And he's like, "No, I'm just doing it." And then, lost the kingdom. So, yeah, I don't know.
I was thinking of Abraham with Ishmael.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. He was waiting and waiting and waiting.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just going to make it happen.
God's promised it. You just got to
He was too hasty.
hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like he did wait for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like most people would go, that's a long wait, right? But God didn't say stop waiting. But okay, because I was also thinking about like examples, and one that sprang to mind for me was Moses in particular. He when he went to Midian, he goes there. We often think about Moses, and we kind of pick up the story at the burning bush. What most people don't really think about at that point is that at the burning bush, the dude's 80.
Yeah, the other 39 years.
Yeah. So like, there was like 39 years before that of him hanging around making sure sheep don't kill themselves. That and funny enough, that's what he spent the next 40 years doing too. Okay, human sheep though, but. I just think of the level of patience that would be required for that, and I know that God's purposes were served, and that's the point there. But like, I do wonder how much of that, like what we see of Moses waiting, was that Moses needing to wait for God, or was that God saying, Moses, like you're not ready yet?
Waiting for Moses.
Waiting for Moses. Yeah. And so when we have to wait, is it that we're actually genuinely waiting on God, or is God waiting on us to get the amount of patience into our character that fruit of the Spirit is ripened sufficiently for us to be the kind of person that can bear with whatever it is that's about to happen?
Like the concept of the refiner's fire.
Yeah.
Like you got to be in there for a while.
Yeah, it's suffering and it feels like a long time. When you're inside, it's funny. Something can feel like 10 minutes when you're really enjoying yourself, when it was actually an hour. But the reverse is also true. Like we had a dead hang challenge in a fitness group that I'm a part of, and when you're like holding your body weight by your hands and you're there and you think, oh, I've been hanging here for so long. This has got to be up hitting 2 minutes, and you check your watch and it's like, oh, that was 26 seconds. So like when stuff's painful, it feels like an eternity, and I think that's the difference, right? When we can still trust God even when it's hurting. I like the way you pointed out the fact that long-suffering has the proactive part of that experience.
Yeah. I found there was this short that I did, Jackie Hill Perry, obviously.
Of course. Jackie Hill Perry is your C.S. Lewis, like per Steve's version.
Yeah. I wish I could get the script of it, but the essence of it, she was saying, it's from the sermon In Defense of Hope, based on Psalm 42. And the idea was that a lot of our idolatry comes from impatience with God. Like, are we, in our pain, and our waiting, will we trust him? Because does like the bottle answer our pain quicker? Does an addiction answer our pain quicker? Do we trust the timeline, and do we trust that even when our emotions aren't resolved, do we trust that he's good? And I feel like patience is just such a big aspect of relying on who God is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go watch that.
Yeah.
I didn't explain it very well.
No,
you could send it through and we can play it.
Send it to you, Maddie.
We could react to it.
Yeah.
I was listening to a sermon today. Shout out to Josh Gonzalez in Sydney. What a legend. And he was talking about how we should be waiting patiently for the second coming. But also, like, we're waiting for Jesus to come back, but Jesus is waiting for us to be ready so that he can come back, So it's like it's a very much a patience game on both sides. I thought that was very interesting because he was doing the story of the 10 virgins, the 10 bridesmaids,
Yep.
and talking about how there were the wise ones that prepared for a long wait, and then there was the foolish ones that didn't prepare to be there for a long time,
Yep.
and how we should be ready to wait a while. Here it is. We got
here we go.
We're gonna watch it.
Let's watch it.
Let's do that.
This looks very Pentecostal. I apologize.
Yeah. Mega church. Look out.
Listen to the words.
Some of our idolatry is because we are really uncomfortable with moving at God's pace.
Heresy.
You ask God for comfort, but it seems like the bottle answered your prayer quicker than the Spirit did. You ask God for insight and direction, but divination and psychics and witchcraft gives you insight about your future that you didn't have to tarry for. In this life, we are going to have to come to terms with the fact that we have a world of desires and a world of needs and a world of feelings inside of us that we might have to just wait for God to satisfy. But the question is, as you wait, will you love him? Some of...
I love how it's like double closed captioned, whatever it is.
That's true.
Out of
That's
that,
really good.
yeah, that's what you picked up on. Sorry,
Sorry, guys.
But yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective because we're a whole generation of people that have glorified not waiting for things. There's a creator on TikTok. I wish I could remember the dude's name, but he talks about the shift that there is of like how people are now signaling that they are, how like luxury brands are changing to to fit the new values that the world is possessing. And what he was saying I thought was really interesting. Again, not a Christian creator at all, but I thought, man, this applies to the spiritual world so much. He said in the 90s and early 2000s, your sign of the fact that you were an important person was how busy you were, how much you crammed into a week, and how little you slept. Whereas now, the people that we're like, oh, they're successful, are the people that get plenty of sleep, look after their bodies, and they indulge in things that are slow. They read books in the park. They stay away from their phones. And it's like the things that we now glorify in our society are the opposite of the things we glorified 15 years ago. And I was like, oh, that's...
They're selling you normalcy.
Yeah, that's right. It's sort of like they created the problem.
We'll fix your problem.
Yeah, that's right. So now here you go, right? So yeah, it's interesting. I think our relationship with God, we have the ability as Christians. We should know all this stuff, right? Like we shouldn't need culture to say, yeah, you should be looking after yourself or fill in these blanks. With God, we should be able to intuit those things and read the scriptures. But we're not willing to do the slow thing because in life it's much too easy just to be busy to fill in those gaps and not have to wait. Like she was saying, using alcohol or drugs or witchcraft, yeah, that's the word. So all of these things to speed up the process, because then we're the ones that are in control of the timeline, and just waiting for God is somewhat of a forgotten art. Like I'll ask you guys this question: when you have time to spend with God, or when you make time to spend with God, do you find it easy to just sit in the quiet and wait, or is it kind of like you say to God what you have to say and then you're out of there? Like, what do you find your experience to be?
Definitely the second. Yeah, big time.
What?
I know you pray out your window and you say you take that intentional time, so I love that.
It's neither.
Mm-hmm.
When I do it, it's slow, but I'm not disciplined enough to make it. I don't think it's high quality in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll sit there and it'll be intentional time with God, but my mind wanders, but I still
Yeah.
that space is there.
Mm. And I think that's the way it should be, because we can't always have control over exactly where our brain is at any given moment, but you're creating the space. Yeah.
The long suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
I don't know. I think I smash out a prayer. I smash
I
out
can
a
see
prayer.
that.
So prayers are to be
Like I'm
smashed
like,
out.
boom.
Yeah.
No. I'm not saying that the way I do it is the way it should be done. I'm just saying I smash it out. Boom. Get out of prayer.
Mm.
And then I wait patiently for an answer. I don't think that just because I'm smashing out a prayer nice and quick means that I'm not being patient
No.
by any means.
Well, I think a great example of that is Elijah at Mount Carmel, right? The pagan, the priest of Baal, they were there crying out and doing long-winded prayers and dancing and all the rest of it, and he just walks out and goes, "Hey God,
yeah.
fry this."
And it was fried.
That's what's fried. That's it. So the length of the prayer has nothing to do with the holiness of the prayer, but the fact that he made the space for God, right?
But straight after that, God definitely taught him a lesson in patience. Made him pray 7 times before he gave him an answer.
Yeah, that's true.
It
That's
was 7 years, dude. The whole thing was patience of drought. Yeah.
true.
That was 3.5 years.
3.5, my bad.
Yeah, halfway there.
3.5.
Yeah. So I was also
Doubled it. That's what it felt like.
yeah. I'm sure for him he would have felt like that. You're right.
Oh man, it's a long drought, eh? Like
Yeah.
I remember we had like a 5-month drought in Sydney, and it was like the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like it was just everything was over. Like everything came to a standstill. You couldn't do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was the worst. That was 5 months, and then it rained, and everyone was like, "It's raining!" Like 3.5 years. Oh man, it would have been just dust.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was thinking, if we're talking about this art of patience or long suffering, how do we then balance that with action? Like, because I don't think God wants us to do nothing perpetually. So how do we know when is the right time to be people of action rather than people of patience?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of examples
Hmm.
in the Bible. I feel like people start with patience. Like they stay and have that intentional time with God. And when God tells them what to do, then they can go forward with clarity.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I think it depends on what you're being patient for. I think there's things to be patient for, and there's things to go out and do.
Yeah.
You know, before Christ ascended, he said, "Go into all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit." That wasn't something.
You don't
to
have
be
to wait.
patient for. Don't have to wait.
Yeah.
Get out and do it. You know, we've been given a mission. We do not have to wait to do the mission. We go out and we do it.
Yeah.
That's our mission, and that's what we do. We patiently wait for the glorious return, right? The second coming.
So the primary difference I would suggest is that we are patient for the things we don't have control over.
Yes.
So, because when you were saying that there are things that we don't have to wait for, I think that's absolutely accurate, because I think how I think about God's leading is opportunity. You know, the opportunity is there. I have the capacity to do it, and I believe that it's the right thing to do, so I'm going to do it. I'm not going to wait. You know, yes, of course, if God were to intervene, that would be fine with me. But I'm going to go after those things. I'm predisposed, especially in this season of my life. I am much more predisposed to action rather than waiting. But there are things that I don't have control over that I would love to happen. But patience. That I was talking to a friend of mine today. Her name's Claude, and we were talking about the waiting in the areas of life that we don't have control over, and I was saying to her, you know, like in the Sermon on the Mount, when he's talking about the birds of the air, and like they don't stress, they don't worry for anything. They're continually active, but they don't worry for what's next. They don't worry for the things that they don't have control over. And I think that is incredibly difficult, because for us as creatures, our minds are much more complex. We know the needs that we have tomorrow. So go throw that spanner, Steve. Throw that spanner.
I have probably a problem with definition.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
In that can you be patient, or of what value is patience for something that you have no ability to affect?
But okay.
So in the sense that you can choose to be patient and wait, or you can choose to be mad, but you can't do anything about it. So there is no value in the patient or not, the thing doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in all of the examples that we've talked about where people have failed, so Moses striking the rock,
Mm-hmm.
Saul offering the sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could find more, but they're the two that come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
They're actions that they could have taken, and or Abraham and Ishmael, they were called to inaction.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how it was. Yeah.
Oh no! I just realized something. There's a common thread between everything you just said.
Yeah.
The common thread is what are you laughing at? The common the common thread is that they were not willing to wait, and so they, just like the clip that we watched, they fulfilled it in a way that
In their own way,
that outside of God's needs.
It's not being patient because you can't do it. Because
you can't do it
But
without
they were
crossing God's
waiting.
needs.
They were waiting for God to do something that only God could do, and then
Exactly.
they went and did their version of it.
That's it.
So they still didn't affect the outcome.
Mhm.
So they couldn't like God said, "I'm going to pour water out of this rock." Moses couldn't pour water out of the rock, right? But he got hasty and he rushed God, right? But he still didn't pour the water. Like Moses did not pour the water out of the rock, right? And so, well, I guess probably one of the other ones would be a better example, but like they were told that something was going to happen that they did not have the capacity to do. Like Abraham could not get his wife pregnant. He couldn't do it. He could not get his wife pregnant. But God said, I'm going to let you get your wife pregnant, right? And then he went and got someone else pregnant. So he still didn't get his wife pregnant. God was the one who, well, I mean, he got his wife pregnant, but God was still the one who allowed that to happen. So I don't know.
I think this is one of those things where there are a mixture of things. I think in situations where we don't have control to go and do the thing, then I think what God is calling us to, yes, is patience, but it's actually He's calling us to don't be anxious over it, right? So you may not have control over it, and it's something you got to wait for. Where the action we're called to take is to not be anxious about it. And I think the corresponding thing of, well, maybe we could do it, but we'd have to cross God's will in order to do it. Then that's a place where I think that's even harder, because that's a mixture of long suffering and self-control, and we'll talk about that in another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because last week we talked about peace, hey?
Yeah.
And that's the idea that through a circumstance, we're going to be in a state of zen, kind of, that we're just like come at terms with everything. But long suffering, it comes with this idea of it's tumultuous inside. You're going through it for a long time and it's not feeling good.
Yeah.
But they're both fruits of the Spirit. That's the thing. You're going through a situation, but what they both have in common, whether you're feeling it or whether you're not, is that you have the perception of God, that He is who He is, and that whether you're suffering in that He's still love, and whether you're peaceful in that He's the same. But
Yeah, I like that. There's so many truths in the Bible that must be held in tension. You know, like the peace and long suffering. They could easily be seen as being mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
It's just like you're sharing, but not necessarily.
Mm.
Right? Yeah. I was thinking about Jesus' ministry as well. I was thinking about how did Jesus demonstrate long suffering, and He did in many different ways. But I think it's fair to say that His life could be described as a life of action, especially from the beginning of His ministry, right? He was always going somewhere else, doing something else, helping somebody, but he exhibited extreme restraint when it come to His mission, as like revealing who He was. And so he, I feel like if it was me, I'd be like, call the disciples. Okay, you're all on my team. Great, let's sit down. You're all wrong. okay, so this is what it's actually going to be like. I'm actually going to die. You know, like from the human perspective, it'd be like just rush through all of that. But you know, in God's timing, He knew that they couldn't stand that. Like they weren't ready for that, and so that He led them through that over the course of that time frame. And then when He gets right down to the end of His life, where He's going through what He went through in Gethsemane, He's putting it in God's hands. And that's a great example of what you were sharing, Steve, of the fact that He could have tapped out, but He chose not to. So because it would have required Him to cross the will of God, which He was not prepared to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, His entire life really was a life of long suffering.
Yeah. What I really like is resilience. They say it's like the number one indicator, like in children, of success later in life, because you're able to go through something well. Like you have like the tools and you know how to suffer long. But yeah, just a passing thought. I like that word.
How do you suffer long? Like it's not just about being in pain. Like how do you do it well?
With God. Just any emotion.
Like it might, it might seem like a trite question, but it's a genuine one. Like, how do you do a good job of that?
Job suffered. What did he do? He kept talking to God. He questioned and he was raw. I feel like that's really valuable. Trying to think of other examples.
Yeah.
I think practically, patience is usually required of us from not necessarily failing, but another person's actions or inactions. And in those situations, like, I mean, the example that comes to mind is whenever Rach and I fight, it's like, often it's me not being patient, and like it would rectify the fight a lot. Like even like no matter what it is, if I was just like, "Shut up, you idiot," to myself, not to her, and just gave her,
thankfully,
and just gave her a hug, it'd be like fixed. But I'm like, but I'm right, and and then I get impatient because it's just anyway. I don't know if that's necessarily patience, but if we were willing to set ourselves aside and the issues that we have aside and be patient and hear the other people out, or if they've wronged us, to give them the time to reconcile in their own heads, like, or even if they haven't wronged us, it's just, you know, they've failed to meet a deadline at work, and you just go, oh, well, it's going to set me back another week, and you know, what's another week? Oh, well, you know, it's not worth burning bridges over.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Delayed gratification.
Yeah.
When we were talking at the beginning and I asked the question of what do we get out of it? Like, you know, what's the benefit of this? That's one of the words that was in my head, delayed gratification. Because if we learn how to be okay with that, I think there's been more studies done on that than, like, you know, most other things, that if you get good at delayed gratification and you can do that even for a small part of your life, like your outcomes just generally
Resilience.
Resilience is so much better. So much better. And I think you could say the same for ministry.
But delayed gratification only works if you know that you're gonna get the thing that you're waiting for. You know, like if I'm like, okay, I need
space.
I need to go to sleep. No, that's not a bad example. I'm just thinking of what I need right now. Like I need to get a home loan. It's like I know if I go, I don't know that I'm ever going to get one. Then I'm going to stress about it. I'm going to work towards it. But if I go, okay, I've got a plan. It's going to happen. I just need to stick it out. And I know that I'm going to get it. Then it's like, okay, sweet. I'm happy.
Yeah.
You know? And if you can be happy with the knowledge that you're going to get what you need, instead of having it right away, well, that's delayed gratification, which is a big part of patience. Sure.
And also faith is in there, right? Because you had to get to the place where you believed that it's going to get better.
Or even hope.
Yeah.
If you're just hopeful towards it, I think hope can even just take the place of knowledge. You know, hope can be a big part of it. because we're patiently waiting for the second coming,
Mm-hmm.
which we often refer to as a great hope.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
even though like we confidently know that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who would you say? I mean, we've talked a lot about different Bible characters, but in your own lives, do you have, when you think of people who are patient, do you have people that spring to mind that you know? And are there any lessons that you can draw out of those people in your mind? Just curious. Because I'm trying to do that, and I mean, yes, I know people who are patient.
I do, but I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, so I'm not going to tell you.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm like, oh, that person was super patient with that person for a really long time. Can't talk about that.
Yeah, but that's not. Yeah, but that's not a public conversation.
That's right.
Yeah, understood. Yes. Yeah. Well, I some of the people that spring to my mind, like for me, my dad is one of those people. You know, my dad is such a patient guy. I was not gifted at birth with a large supply of patience. Let me just say that. And God,
We're going to clip that bit.
yeah, send it to my parents. I love it.
I was not gifted at birth. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like growing up, I was definitely that definitely wasn't my strong point, and I would get frustrated with my dad because he'd had it. You know, and so like we would be doing something and I just wanted to jump to the end part where it was finished or it was built or it was sanded back or like whatever it was. I just wanted to jump to that part of the story. And washing the car, I'd be like, and there'd be all these parts that were still dirty and it would absolutely drive me up the wall that Dad would then go, oh, come back here. Do you see that part there? And that part there? And the wheels haven't been done, and it was just not in my nature. But like as an adult, like I've watched Dad have some really challenging things. Like I don't like if there's something that's not working, I'm not the person that wants to take it apart because taking it apart, I'm like that's like then there's opportunity for it to get even worse. You know,
the
like
journey awaits.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. This could get worse before it gets better. But Dad, it could be a very simple thing that's wrong. But like, you know, this is true of working on my lawnmower or the car or whatever. Something's not working. He's like, well, I can't see around corners. So let's just take it apart. And it could be a really simple thing. And I'm like, what? How long is it going to take for us to take it all to pieces? But Dad is just methodical like that. And he's like, well, no, I can't see what's going on. So that needs to happen if we're going to fix this problem. And it doesn't matter if it takes 5 minutes or 2 hours or all afternoon. To him, it's all the same. It's just a part. It's just a step between me and where I want to get to. And he'll just work his way through it, and I just don't understand that. And I'm trying to be more like him in those ways. So Dad, if you're ever listening to this one, thank you for being a good role model for that one.
Task oriented.
Yeah, very much so.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was reading a book called "Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools," and there was a section on it.
Oh, what a title!
Yeah, I know, it was so good. What's it called? And there was a section where it reflected on Jesus' life, and it said he was both intentional and interruptible. So he was intentional about his mission, but there was enough space in his day, and like he had that patience to let people like that needed him come to him and fill that space.
Yeah.
But yeah, so very much a Jesus thing to be patient.
And I don't know, it's pretty satisfying when you get like leave room in your day and you can help people.
Yeah,
And just be chill about it.
totally. Yeah. You don't feel rushed when you're helping. It's good.
What if you guys are happy to share? What is something that you're still learning to be passionate about? Patient about. Sorry.
Patient. Less so like patient than like sticking with it. Yeah. Student things, studying, I don't like it. Yeah, I picked a STEM subject. Why don't I?
Yeah, that'd be easy.
It'll be fun, they said.
Yeah. So I'm just learning to be intentionally, let me rephrase, put myself intentionally into situations where I have to be long-suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that looks like studying, and I just have to sit down and do it
Mm-hmm.
for a long time.
Yep.
Regardless of how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm learning.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm
Yep.
better than I was a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm happy.
Mm.
Still getting better.
Yeah. Constant improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm fairly patient, but I think I don't have an attention span,
Mm-hmm.
which sort of makes it seem like I'm not patient. Makes me feel like I'm not, and I definitely get frustrated too easily
Mm-hmm.
with things that don't make sense. If it makes sense and I know what's wrong with it, even if I can't fix it, so long as I know why I can't fix it, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't know what's wrong with something, or something's going on, my children are acting a way that doesn't make any sense to me, then I get
Mhm.
frustrated.
Yeah, I was.
I think I need to work on that,
Yeah,
definitely.
two things that sprang to mind for me. One was as a father, because I genuinely thought I was doing pretty well on the patience front until I had children. So
Same.
that definitely highlights that. But yeah, on the other end, in business, God led me to doing what I'm doing right now, and I've been doing it for 3 years, and for the last 2.5 of those years, I've been 3 months away from a breakthrough. if you follow my meaning there, I'm like, yeah, we're almost there. Like it's just like just a couple more months, and then all of the cogs are going to start turning. We've grown. Like there's been like really positive stuff that's happened, but that breakthrough that I've been waiting for since month 6 has definitely not hit. And I feel progressively more stupid every time I say it, but now I'm like, no, but I really am now. Like,
Yes, you are.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, you are.
yeah. But God's teaching me patience there. I'm like, oh God, we can't. It's got to happen soon. And hey, 3 years in, soon is still like a few months away. But
Soon TM.
Biblical soon.
yeah, that's right.
Oh, man.
But how much is what I was thinking is like, how much is that like the second coming though, right? Like we're like,
I was thinking of creation.
Creation.
God wanted so desperately to create people,
Mm-hmm.
but he had to create light, and then he had to create water, and then he had to create air, and he had to create trees, and then he had to create animals, and he had to create all these things before he could create.
Yep.
So it's like if you want the breakthrough, Adam and Eve were the breakthrough, but he was like, I have to do all of this before I can do that. Because if you go straight to the breakthrough, then your foundation is weak and then collapses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like
I think that might be what you're going through a little bit.
I
Because you
think
said
so.
you're growing and you're progressing, and maybe that's just because if the breakthrough had come before your business had grown and progressed to where it is now, then the breakthrough would have collapsed.
Yeah. I think you're very right, and like I can see that from an organizational perspective, but even from a personal growth perspective, like I'm not sure that if it had have happened when I wanted it to happen, I'm not sure that I would have been the person or have the character to handle it when it did. I'm a very different person. I think I've grown a lot in that time frame. So yeah, it's very possible that God's just giving me the Moses treatment. It's like, no, you're not the one. You're not who you need to be just yet, Luke.
Yeah.
Just hold tight there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I feel like we've talked. Oh, well, how are we doing for time?
Yeah, we've been going for 44 minutes, so
Oh, okay.
got a
We've got
little
time.
bit left in the
Got
tank.
it.
We got a bit of
Yeah.
time. Go on, make that point.
Yeah.
No. I had like 2 sitting back there. I'll say one. We've touched a lot on like patience with circumstance, but Steve
Yes.
brought up something earlier, and it's like patience with people. How do we deal with that, especially practically? What does that look like? How do we achieve it?
Live as a hermit.
Avoid everyone.
Do you find it easier to be patient with circumstance or people?
Oh, circumstance.
So, yeah.
Well, there you go.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
Yeah, people, definitely. Yep. Most
You can't change people.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can change circumstance.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
With logic
it's-
and reason.
It depends. Like
They're called doors.
it's funny. Like I was so firmly on the people side of this equation with you just then. I was like, yeah, like I'm way more patient with people. But then I thought about it for a second, and I'm like, that's only true with people I don't live with.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, me too.
I've got way more patience for people that I'm never going to see again or I don't see regularly, because it's like, that's an inconvenience for that day. But for the people that I rub shoulders with every single day, yes, they may have experienced as a net total more of my patience over the course of the last decade. But if I'm stressed or whatever, like I'm much less likely to be understanding of those people in those moments. Which I guess that's, I don't know, changes things a little bit. But
I think I have more patience for the people I live with.
yeah.
I think I'm the opposite, to be honest, because I'm
Mm.
like, this person doesn't, like, I'm never going to see him again. Like, I don't have time for them.
Really?
Yeah. But it's like,
I'm like, I'm never going to see this person again. This is the only
someone-
opportunity I have to demonstrate good to them.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I get that. Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I always get hung
I
up
get
on
that.
motives.
Motives.
Because like
Yours or theirs?
mine. It's like, do I really care about making a good influence on that person, or do I care
Social
about
mass.
their perception of me,
Mm-hmm.
even though I know I'm not going to see them again?
Mm-hmm.
So it would be much better to be
a good
like
question.
just flipping off strangers and being nice to everyone that you actually like
Mr.
live
Bean.
with, than being rude to the people you live with and being like ultra nice to just people that you just like. You just gave them money to give you like petrol. It's like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it can be a difference.
My relationship with this person matters to me enough that I'm going to suffer long through
Yeah.
whatever it is that they're doing that's annoying me.
How about with your enemies, though?
And ideally, it's with everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes.
Ideally.
Yeah. So, from one question I was going to ask is, why is this a fruit of the spirit? Like, why is it a fruit of the spirit and not just
Because God's
a
long-suffering.
trait? Hey?
Because God's long suffering.
Yeah.
Because God's patient. The fruits of the spirit are God's. This is who God is, and therefore, when we have the Holy Spirit, who is God, in us, then we become more like God. So because God is long-suffering, because God is so patient with us, and he has much more reason to be patient with us than we do with him, because he has to put up with us more than we have to put up with him, well, then we become like him. We become long-suffering, patient. Sorry if I answered that too quickly. I feel like I jumped in while you were still asking the question.
No, that's fine. It was a good answer.
I feel like personality traits show different aspects of what God can look like. Like, people have different strengths and different. I think of it like a diamond, and people like different edges, and then you just see things from different perspectives. But I feel like the fruits of the spirit are like the carbon. It's like the essence of it, and how do I say this? That it's more than a personality trait. It's like a basis of character. But yeah.
No, I like that. I think of I tend to think of the fruits of the Spirit and the gifts of the Spirit as being tiered in some way. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. If you are connected to God, the fruits of the Spirit must be growing in your life. And if they're not, that's a sign that you're actually not connected to God. Like, that's very binary in my understanding. However, the gifts of the Spirit, you're not guaranteed to get all of them. That's just a case of which ones of those God gives you, depending on what situation is there, what needs are there, and what mission God wants to put you on or send you on.
So how we said you even mentioned at the beginning of this episode that love is the alpha gift, and that all the other gifts come from love. So I guess a good question to ask would be, how is patience a direct result of having love in your heart?
First thought that came to my mind was with people.
Mm.
I watched, I think it was today, like David Ashwick was saying something like, like I've got no faith in humanity anymore. And he's like, no, don't, because like that's something people say.
Yeah.
It's like, don't, because God hasn't. God is still being patient with them. So, sorry, what was your original question? Just so I can make sure.
How is patience a direct result of having love in your heart?
Because if you love people, you'll give them the space to grow,
Mm.
even if that hurts you.
Yeah,
in the meantime.
you'll wait for them to be
Yeah. And like, I mean,
better.
probably not articulating it as well as I could have earlier, but patience costs you something.
Mm.
Either time, potentially money, sanity,
sanity
like
is a big one, yeah.
emotional drain.
Yeah.
It always costs you something, which by definition is selflessness, which is God's character,
Suffering.
which our human nature is not. So we cannot be patient without God, or we are not patient without God.
Selflessness is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even
That-
even patience for the second coming. It is because, well, you would, if you didn't love Jesus, you wouldn't be excited for him to come.
Yeah.
And then if you weren't excited for him to come, then you wouldn't be waiting.
Yeah.
You know.
Last week I read this passage from James, and I just when we were just chatting just then, it came back to me. James chapter 1 verse 2. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. We talked about that because we looked at it last week. No, but then where does it go? Knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience.
Yeah.
Patience.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go.
And I thought that's a really cool model to think about this through. You know, that we can count it joy when we fall into the various trials, but knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. So the fact that we're going through those trials, that's going to produce patience in us. In verse 4, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. So if you want to be perfect and complete, lacking nothing, it's impossible for you to get there without patience.
Wow. It's interesting that's one of the two characteristics described, like that describe the people of God at the end of time. Like, here is the patience of the saints, and then they keep the commandments of God. Like,
Because they've waited till the end. They've made it to the end, waiting for the second coming. I've got a verse on the waiting for the second coming in James as well, chapter 5, verses 7 and 8. Therefore be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it. Waiting patiently for it until it receives the early and latter rain. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. And I think that's a great verse for the. I mean, we're Adventists, aren't we? I mean, Advent literally means waiting patiently for someone to arrive.
Yeah.
That's what the word
Kind of the
Advent
point.
means, you know. And we're Adventists. I feel like this idea of waiting patiently for the second coming to happen is who we are as a group and as a church culture.
Another verse just a little bit further along. I know we're sort of clustering a lot of verses right now, but just as we're talking, I'm sort of turning them up. 2 Peter 3 verse 9. It's a really famous verse, but it only just occurred to me that it includes long suffering. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some count slackness, but is long suffering towards us, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance.
And this is what I was saying before.
Yeah.
As in, we're waiting patiently for Christ to come, and he's waiting patiently for us to be ready
Yes.
so he can come.
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome, Tyan. More Bible verses.
Yes. That's what we're doing.
Colossians chapter 1.
Yeah. Go, fire away.
Yeah, I was listening to it in the car on the way here. I'm like, oh, it mentions patience. Yeah. Colossians 1, 11 and 12, because this is a really weird translation. May you be made strong with all the strength which comes from his glorious power, so that you may be able to endure everything with patience. And with joy give thanks to the Father who has made you fit to have your share of what God has reserved for your people in the kingdom of light. Yeah.
Endurance is a good word for patience, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I feel like
Endure.
joy and patience have been paired a lot in the verses we've read.
Mm.
I don't know.
Mm.
Interesting.
It's all interconnected.
We should do an episode on that. Yeah. Mm.
Again.
One other Bible character that we didn't really talk about before that I think is also worth mentioning is King David, because he had that season of his life where he'd been anointed king but was not yet king. Just think about that really highlights the point that we were talking about, like about is it the right thing to do? Even though he could have taken action,
He could've-
right?
Yeah, he could
So
have
many
killed Saul.
times.
and
So
made
many
himself-
times he could have killed
that's
Saul.
a good example.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
didn't make himself king.
He waited for God to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it every time I was reading through First Samuel.
Samuel, yeah.
And he was like, but Saul's like the anointed of the Lord. And I'm like, David, you're such a good person.
Yeah, but he tried to murder you.
Yeah. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. He like honored what God said above everything.
Dude, David was literally like in the cave while Saul was asleep.
Yeah.
Like with his sword standing over him, goes,
Yeah.
I'm just going to cut off a bit of his cloak so he knows that I could have killed him.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's so cool.
It is really cool.
Such a cool character.
When I think about that, I really do wonder if I would have been able to do that, because I mean, it's at first reading I'm like, it's easy, like of course it's the wrong thing to do, like you don't go kill people, but you got to remember
That's
David.
his default.
That's his default setting. David
David
killed
is a
lots
killer.
of people.
He was famous for
Yeah.
being a killer.
Absolutely. And so like killing Saul would have meant like zip to him. Like it would have been an easy physical action for him to take. He would have known exactly what to do it effectively and efficiently. And still didn't do it. That's the thing that does my head in. It's like that. It's not just him recoiling from an uncomfortable circumstance. It's actually him resisting his own nature.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I mentioned that in my Mephibosheth sermon about how David was incredibly famous for two things. Number one, he was the guy who killed Goliath when he was a kid. He was super famous for that. And then there was the song that Saul has killed his thousands and
David
David
his
his
10,000.
tens of thousands. So those two things were what he was famous for, both killing.
Yes.
He was a very efficient and famous killer.
Yep. Yep.
That's crazy.
And yet was
though.
patient.
Yeah. Because he had like every ability to do that, but he trusted God's timeline above everything. He's like, I'll be king when the time comes.
Yeah. And even when he would almost fall to that temptation, he didn't. Because remember when Abigail came and brought food to him because he was coming to kill what was his name? Her husband. O-U?
No, it starts with
N. Nabal?
Yeah,
Nabal? Nabal? There it is.
Yeah.
And so she comes and says like, don't let your anger get the better of you. Like here's food. He's an idiot. We know, we get that, but leave him alone. And he
So he let his other character traits take over.
that's right. He was angry.
come with me.
He was about to do it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
I was like, I did not hear a word you said.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
He said then he let his other character traits take over and ended up taking her as his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also a David.
Yeah.
David.
Hey, he did at least wait till the guy had a stroke and died. That's positive.
He was patient.
He was patient.
Next time he killed the guy.
Yeah. That was a different thing.
By proxy.
Yeah.
He didn't trust God.
There's so many. If you were not aware of that story, this section would make no sense. This would
Just
Read
go and
your
read
Bible.
the entire
Read
story
it.
of David a couple of times through.
Yeah.
First
There's so
Samuel
many lessons
slaps.
from David.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Such a good book.
So, is there anything that you feel, any stones that we are still yet to turn over, or do you think we're at a good place to wrap this up and target next week?
I'm good.
I'm
Keep
good.
burning.
Very good.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we will leave it there. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with a friend. And also for next week, we are eagerly awaiting any recommendations from you. Any reels that you'd like us to react to. Tell us if you have a words are escaping me, but if you have a small group and you'd like to tell us about that, we would love to share a message from you guys, whether it's a voice memo or a selfie, like send us a video or whatever it might be. We'd love to share that on the show. So we're going to leave it there. We look forward to catching you guys next week. And in the meantime, God bless.
Talking about kindness?
Yeah.
Kindness.
That's the next one, right?
Yeah. Come join us for kindness.
Kindness it is. See you guys.
God bless.
Bye.